Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. We're still here for another day. Day 4, in fact, of the Haunted Tales Challenge, which is a challenge hosted by myself and my friend Belle over at Bella Blue Creations. She'll be linked in the title, probably, most likely, if not the description box. But the whole challenge will be linked in the description box below, including the challenge videos, the previous days, and any videos from the other people who are also participating in the challenge, as well as the stories that we are discussing, or covering, or prompting. Will also all be in one convenient playlist for your viewing pleasure in the description box below, so go check that out. Today is day 4, and the prompt is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and the tagline for today is Be careful what you wish for, there is always a price that cannot be escaped. And you guys, I love this one. I am so excited. So, as you know, we are building this flip-flop envelope contraption, and in addition to the regular prompts, I've given myself some extra random prompts using my Randomera prompt list, which is available on my blog for free. It's a freebie. You go get it. There's all sorts of cool stuff up there, freebies. Go forth. And then come back. But my little prompts for today are library pockets, clusters, and gold/copper. So I gotta figure that out. Don't really have a plan for the challenges. I do have a plan for the pages. So, we're going to get into those. And I already bound up day 3 so that we don't have to worry about it. So I have this page, which is actually 2 envelopes I stuck together because I wanted a nice big tall page. I wanted a tall guy in here. But I didn't want it to be a tall skinny guy. So, we got a little real estate up top here to work with. I don't know if anything special is going there. I'm just saying I have real estate up there. And then this is going to be the start of the next set. So for these, I have this big page, and then it flips out into this page. So I got those pages to cover. I did go over it with some washi tape that'll get better adhered down as more paper goes on top. Because I decided I was going to start maybe reinforcing some of these connections. And then I have this one, which I thought would be a cool, like, something. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to make the final cut, so I didn't glue it in, but that's what we got to work with. And so, there's a couple things I have to do before we get too deep into anything. And the start of that is to take my image, which is a picture from my Stage and Screen digital kit, which is available on Patreon. Not just as a reward, but also purchasable in my shop. I'm going to start moving more stuff into that shop. But there is a Patreon shop, and it's there. And then the fees are better for me than they would be if you bought stuff on Etsy. So, like, check that out. Even if you don't want to join my Patreon, there's stuff that you can buy in that shop. If you see anything here you like, I will be adding more stuff to it as time goes on. And some of you guys follow me on Ko-fi or Ko-fi, depending on how you're saying it. So I might start putting stuff in the shop over there, too. Just, you know, to catch you guys over there in case you don't want to go the Patreon route. The Ko-fi route also has better rates and fees than Etsy does, because Etsy is my nemesis right now. But I photocopied this from my Stage and Screen digital kit, which is basically just a bunch of old images, mostly cabinet card images, or just random like actor photo shots from days gone by, the days of yore. So I have this guy, and I'm like, okay, perfect, great. I photocopied it using a couple different, like, exposures to get some different vibes, but I'm kind of feeling these ones. I feel like there's a better juxtaposition between the two. So I'm feeling this one. I'll save this as a backup, and then I have another copy in case I mess up everything horribly as a third or fourth backup. So we'll see how things go here. But what I need to do first is get these Mod Podged, because I'm going to do some stuff on top of one of them for sure. I don't know about the second one, but I want to make sure that they don't run, because this is an inkjet print. And of course I don't have like a paintbrush at my desk, so hold on. Yeah, they're all sitting in the paint water cup by the sink, so I found one that was dry, because you do want this to be fairly dry if you're doing stuff with inkjet printings so that you don't reactivate the inkjet ink. Should have probably also had this upside down before I started. There we go. So I'm just going to go fast because I don't want to move the inks around. I just want to get like a nice little coat down so that anything I put on top doesn't activate the ink and make my copy look weird. Yeah, I was mostly just sort of playing around. I have a new printer, scanner sort of situation, so I was playing around with the like combos of exposure and light and dark settings and qualities to see what I was going to get. I maybe should have thought about brush strokes when I started this. It doesn't matter because it's supposed to be a painting. This is a photo, but the brush strokes, if I make them maybe a little random, will make it look more like a painting. Yeah? I don't know. That's just what I'm telling myself. Ew. So, gonna get those down really quick, and I can't talk about anything while I do this, apparently. I'm getting a new neighbor, so you might hear them in the background. It is a team of girls moving in. They're doing all the moving by themselves, one truckload at a time. I really appreciate their tenacity, but they're also very loud. That I appreciate less so. So yeah, you might hear them because they move it in two like bursts as they're emptying out whatever's in the truck bed. And then they tend to like just stop on the stairway and have like a kiki, which like I get it, they're recovering their breaths and like getting, you know, they're like ish together before they head back out and go pick up more stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, please carry your kiki on to the inside of the house. And then of course my birds are out there making all the noise too. So it's been a very noisy morning because it's the birds and then the neighbors and then the birds and then the neighbors. And I'm like, wow. Okay, so I actually sat here for a bit, being like, okay, you have to, oh, not right there. That's not a good place. Hold on. Okay, so the place ended up being my heat tool. But what I was going to say, and I had to go back and look at the video because I forgot what I was talking about. It's been that long. Was that I sat here for a bit and was like, I can't start recording until this ends, and then I realized it was never going to end, so here we are. What I was going to say before I move this to the side is that, keep in mind that Mod Podge needs to cure in order to fully set. So it's important to do as thin of a layer as possible so that when it dries completely and you don't have like a wet layer underneath. But also, when you're using your heat tool, if you're using your heat tool, you're going to dry this side, obviously, but then you need to turn it over and dry the back so that you get the complete cure. Otherwise, it'll still be wet underneath. It's weird. Mod Podge is weird, but when it cures, it's great. But if you're trying to speed that up, just both sides it. Keep the layer really thin. It'll set just fine. So that's going to go over there for right now. So, I grabbed a couple of things here. Not this. This is extra. I grabbed this statue of this judgy-looking angel on top of a mausoleum. I grabbed this guy because he's going to be Lord Henry, or also known as Harry, who he will be forevermore as I'm telling you guys the story. I grabbed a Harry. I grabbed this because I thought, well, this is a morning cover letter, which is just a bit of ephemera because I need to make some clusters, right? I grabbed this because it has like this fallen angel, there's a bunch of skulls, and then we have like this man with this snake sort of whispering in his ear, and the theme of the story is sort of temptation and giving in to like our baser instincts and indulgences and things like that. So I feel like that's apropos. I grabbed this because we have a lady who is a young actress. Her name is Sybil Vane in the story, and she's a young actress, so I figured that would be cool. I'm probably going to end up cutting out the cabinet card part and just using her image. But this is her on the set of a production, and that becomes relevant in the story. And then we have this distinguished gentleman who kind of looks like a nice old man, you know, like he looks friendly. And so I figured he could be Basil. He could be Basil Hallward, who is the artist. And then we have this, which is a, I don't know, it's like a, it looks like a society thing, like a high-class society thing where they're all hanging out listening to somebody read their poetry or their novel or something. So it was kind of giving Oscar Wilde, but also sort of giving the sort of setting that Dorian Gray would be in. And don't worry, you guys, I'm going to tell you the story in a second. If you haven't heard it before, you're not familiar. But it kind of gives the setting that Dorian Gray would be in, where, like, there's a couple high society women, and then there's a bunch of dudes, and they're all just hanging on every word of this charming young man. And then I grabbed this for ephemera cluster reasons. This is from the Perish After Dark kit, which I have not used in a very long time, so I was happy to drag that up. And so is this. So I thought those would be useful there. Those are the printed bits that I gathered. And then I grabbed some scrapbook paper. I grabbed these because it was sort of the same but more modern vibe of the Perish After Dark, because Perish After Dark I think is more Victorian. This is more like 1920s, 1930s-ish. But I want to use this card in particular. The rest is neither here nor there. And then I got this, which is like this really pretty sort of phthalo green snake print. It also kind of reminds me of wallpaper, so I thought that was really pretty. And then sort of ties into the snake image that I got already. And then we have another page from this paper pack, which has that sort of more modern, but sort of nouveau riche sort of thing that I'm thinking upper society, upper class people would have on their wall. It's a print there. So yeah, that's what we got to work with. I don't know how much of this is going to make it into the final cut, but that's what I got. And I have ideas that need to be executed with a piece of cardstock that I did not grab. I grabbed everything else but that. Okay, so apparently I'm out of 65-pound weight cardstock. I only have 110-pound weight cardstock, which is going to make this bulky, but oh well. Gotta go shopping, I guess. So what am I doing? Excellent question, Priscilla. I wish you knew. What we're going to do is measure this envelope. That's what I need to do. And then we'll talk about Dorian Gray, okay? Because I keep telling you I'm going to talk about it, and I haven't said anything yet. So, knock over all your glue. That's right. Oh, there's the glue stick I didn't find because it was knocked over. Well, there we go. Maybe if you just looked. I had a whole, like, moment before I started looking for my glue stick, you guys, and I had to open up another one, and it was a whole thing. Now I found it. Crisis averted. So, let's get some measurements here so we can get the big chopper out and get some chopping done while I talk. Ugh. So this is 5 1/8. If you were my pencil, you would be nowhere. This is becoming slightly more chaotic and unhinged than I originally thought it was going to be. No, because, like, where is my pencil, though? Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is the day of Priscilla doesn't actually know how to look for stuff in her own space. So 5 1/8 by 8 7/8. Okay. Oh, I do have these frames, which are little bits of ephemera that I blew up on my copier. And then I printed it twice with 2 different qualities again. And for whatever reason, this is a copy. This is the original copy. This is the original copy. This is my copy of the copy. And it's bigger. I don't understand. So some sizing will have to get done for sure, because it's the picture of Dorian Gray, and so I wanted it to be in a frame, but I wanted it to be big enough for the actual picture I have. Although I did consider sizing it down, but I was like, no, because you made a big old page, so you need a big old frame. So I may have to trim this one up to match this one, I think. Because yeah, this one is 5. This one may even get trimmed up a little bit. Maybe I'll use the inner frame and not this big outer part. Because I think, yeah, that'll sit better. Because, yeah, that's 4.5. And just to see how much this changed the size in the printing, this is 4 5/8. So, yeah, it added an eighth of... It's really hard. It added an eighth of an inch, so which would be a quarter of an inch on all sides, which is why it looks so much different. It's okay. I will work with it. Also, I realized I needed to oh my god. Just throw the whole English dictionary away. We're learning a new language. We're going to try different words. I realized I needed to clean my scanner because I got the same smudges on both of them, and I was like, where is this coming from? Because I thought it was on the paper. And it's because I've been photocopying and scanning like grungy stuff to share with my patrons on Patreon, and I haven't been wiping off them. So things I have learned today about myself that need to be addressed. I don't know, I'm talking about it and not just cutting it out. You can see my failed attempt at guessing how much percentage I need to make it bigger. That was too much. So, The Picture of Dorian Gray is the only novel by playwright, poet, Oscar Wilde. And actually, interestingly enough, this solved the problem that I had with Carmilla, because it came out originally as a 13 chapter novella in a magazine in 1890, and then was later printed as a full 20 chapter book in 1891. And yeah, I looked it up before I started. I figured I would be less chaotic in the telling for you guys. Also, I had the time I was sitting here being mad about everybody being noisy outside. So yeah, I had time. So interestingly, this story, which I swear I'm not going to keep saying I'm going to tell you about, I will actually start telling you about at some point. But the story had 500 words that were edited out by the editor before it ever went to print, and Oscar never even got to see the final copy of like the changes before it went to print. And the words were edited out for being offensive, because they were sexually suggestive and contained some homoerotic themes, which incidentally would end up coming back to haunt him later on, when after a sort of torrid affair with a lord, I had to look up his name because I didn't know, I knew the details, but I didn't know the name, a Lord Alfred Douglas, whose father accused him being Oscar Wilde, of what's it called? Gross indecency, which was, he accused him of being gay. He accused him of being a homosexual. And it led to him going to court, and in court, they brought out the picture of Dorian Gray, and were like, see, this is evidence that he is a gay. And, it actually worked. It actually worked. Oscar Wilde did attempt to sue, like countersue for, you know, libel, and that did not go as well. He got convicted of gross indecency and sent to a labor camp prison situation for 2 years. Ready to do hard labor and spend all of his time in solitary confinement and, you know, eat shitty prison food that was really poor and meager. And unfortunately, because of this, by the time he got out of prison, his health was like severely degraded, and he only lived for another 3 years after that. When he got out of jail, he was exiled, essentially, or he lived in exile, in France. And so he lived 3 more years until he died in his hotel room in Paris of an ear infection, like an ear infection gone wrong. Just a really severe ear infection took him out because his health was so poor. You know, he didn't have the ability to survive this ear infection. And yeah, that was shitty and fucked up. And I thought it was interesting. The reason I looked up his death in the first place is because I remembered that he had some very interesting last words that were actually really fitting for our day 2 prompt, which was the yellow wallpaper. And I kind of wish I had thought about this before when I did that page, because I would have printed out this quote and stuck it on there, and I might still go back and do it, because his last words were, I am fighting a duel to the death, or my wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. Sorry, I just messed this all up originally. He said, and I quote, my wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One or the other of us has to go. And I read that and was like, yes, because I remember he said something about his wallpaper when he was dying. Those were some of his last words. And I was like, oh man, he said something about wallpaper, so let me go look it up. Then I looked up the circumstances of his death, and then was like, oh man, if I had remembered this like accurately in the right amount of time, I would have absolutely stuck this on the yellow wallpaper, because it's just too perfect and coincidental. Oop, we're getting wonky here. To like pass up. And yeah, so that's just like a little bit about Oscar Wilde. He was married and he had 2 sons with a woman named Constance, who ended up leaving after his conviction in 1895 for gross indecency. And she ended up changing her name and taking her sons and fleeing, so that, you know, they wouldn't be associated with him and his public shaming, I guess, because yeah, this really did a bit of damage to his public reputation, because he was very widely positively regarded for his plays and his letters. He was very witty, very charismatic, and fairly good looking of a young man. He was only, I want to say, like 46 when he died. 42, 46? In his 40s. And I had this observation. I had this observation not that long ago, when I was talking to Tiff, because I happen to be very fond of Oscar Wilde, so he does come up a couple of times in my regular day-to-day life. But I was looking at a picture of him, and it occurred to me that he kind of looks like a young Stephen Fry. There's some similarities there that cannot be disregarded, and however you feel about Stephen Fry aside, I do think that Stephen Fry and Oscar Wilde would be like really good friends. They have a lot in common, and Oscar Wilde was known for being like clever and witty, and kind of what we know Stephen Fry for, although I think maybe he gets a little bit more praise for it. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, because I also read Stephen Fry's Greek mythology books. He has a whole set covering like basically the entirety of Greek mythology, in a sort of fun, easy to access, tongue-in-cheek way, while still being like reverent of the material and thorough in the like information that you're getting. So if you haven't read those, I would recommend them, because they are very good. So just before I proceed, it does fit. Because how embarrassing would it be to get to all the way to like the end and then realize they don't fit at all. So embarrassing. Do I need to Mod Podge one of them? No, I don't think so. That's doing the most. What am I thinking? I don't know. So, we'll move beyond. So yeah, so I've talked to you a little bit about Oscar Wilde. Let's talk about the picture of Dorian Gray. But first, spider check. And what did I say were the measurements on this? 5 1/8 and 8 7/8. Do I want this to be the same size? The answer is no. So give myself a little frame. And consider that we have some space up top to work with. About 1 inch up top. So, give myself a little frame, I said. The actual frame is 4.5. So I don't want to go that small. But maybe to give our frame a frame, let's just go, yeah, 4 3/4 is a good number. And then I got about 1 inch, so 7 7/8. And a frame from top to bottom. We'll go 7, or what did I say? 7 7/8. So 7 3/8. So that's going to be the size of my thing up above. In addition, I need this. I need this to be the size of our page, which is, well, I don't need it to be the size of the page. I need it to be slightly smaller than the size of the page. So we go 8 7/8, and we're going to scale that back to 8 and, what did I say? 7/8, 6/8, 5/8. Yes. I probably could have just cut it the same size. I'm going to put a score line on it anyways, which will shorten it up a bit. But it's okay as long as at the end it's still longer than this card, which it will be. Oh, don't put your cutting guy away. You need the backgrounds. So I got both pieces here together, which may be inadvisable, but you only live once, right? So, the picture of Dorian Gray is a story about a young man named Dorian Gray. The end. That's not a good joke. So, it is a story about a young man who's getting his portrait done by an artist named Basil. And it sort of starts with an introduction to our Lord Harry Wotton. Harry. It starts with Lord Harry coming to visit Basil. I'm just not going to be able to say anything now. So he goes to visit Basil, and he ends up getting to see this portrait and meeting the young man, Dorian Gray, who at the time of this story is, in fact, only 20. So he's a young guy. And one of the things that stands out about Dorian is that he is a very good looking. He's very handsome. He's a little bit naive, but like, he's a very attractive, a very nice, well-spoken young man. He comes from high society, and people generally like him. He's a generally cool guy, right? And oh my god, my brain is fogging. So they see the painting that like Basil has made, and there's some comments that Harry makes that sort of stick with Dorian and make him realize his own mortality. He has like a whole moment where he's like, oh my god, I'm gonna get old and die, because they're basically like, yeah, this painting is as good as you're ever going to look. This is the best you are ever going to look, and you're going to get older every day after this, and you're going to get old and ugly and die. And that really sits with Dorian. Like, it really fucks him up. And he gets to the point where he's like, I gotta do something. I gotta get out of here. I gotta do something. So he makes a wish. Like, just what, we would all consider a very innocent, innocuous wish to, like, not get any older. He wants to be as beautiful as his painting is for the rest of his life. And he takes his painting home. And he ends up getting into this sort of romantic torrid affair with this young artist, actress named Sybil Vane. He's in love with her. It gets announced that he's going to get engaged. And it's important to note that, like, in the story, Basil's, like, a good guy, right? And he's, like, you know, I feel like I'm, like, messing this young man up. Maybe I should get involved. Maybe I should intercede. And then you have, like, Harry, who's, like, the devil on the shoulder. He's got sort of a classically misogynistic, toxic masculinity thing. But he's also very charming and also very well-spoken. But he's got a very old-fashioned sort of view of things and sort of an older man looking back onto his youth and being like, you're never gonna have it this good, kid. Like, it's all downhill from here for you. And he's, like, trying to give Dorian advice while also not being the best of influences. And, like, as much as Basil tries to sort of intercede throughout the course of the story, even in just the beginning, it's just really ineffective because Harry gets into Dorian's ear in all sorts of ways, including with his relationship with Sybil, because Dorian is genuinely, like, very infatuated with her, and he invites his friends to go see one of her performances, and it's awful. It is god-awful, to the point where, like, Harry is, like, offended that, he was even invited to it in the first place, and he says some stuff to Dorian in regards to that, and in regards to, like, his relationship with this woman who's, you know, considered to be a low-born person, by comparison. And he, like, sort of sets Dorian on this path to be, like, a shithead, essentially. That is, like, his entire run here is to be like, hey, what if you were a dick to her? And Dorian takes that to heart, and he's like, yeah, what if I was a dick to her? So he goes and he tells her, he's like, hey, you freaking embarrassed me. I brought all my friends to come see you perform, and it was awful, and you've disgraced me. And he tells her some, like, shit, and basically makes her feel really awful about herself, so awful that she unalives herself. And he's, like, struck with how much he's, like, impacted this young woman. He didn't think this was going to happen. It's not something he wanted to happen. But, you know, because he has his portrait at home and he's been admiring it, he notices that when he looks at his portrait again, it's a little bit crueler looking. There's a bit of a cruel turn to the lip there. And he's like, huh, I was a dick, and now my portrait looks like a dick. You know, it's actually reflecting my character in this moment in time, and that also sticks with him, and it makes him very uncomfortable. So he takes the portrait upstairs, and he's basically sticks it in a room, and is like, okay, I'm not gonna leave this out on display because I don't want other people seeing the truth behind me, which is that I'm a dick. So, there's, like, a time skip in the story. It jumps ahead 18 years, and turns out Dorian, and this is not a spoiler, but if you've never heard of Dorian Gray, it may be a spoiler, but it is a very common thing that we see in popular media. So I'm hoping this is not a big story ending spoiler for you. But it turns out 18 years later, Dorian looks exactly the same as he did as he was 20. And in this entire time, he has been sort of living in high society circles. He has sort of a reputation for being a bit of a cad, and living this really indulgent lifestyle. But he's still really charming, and people are still really drawn to him. He has money, so of course he's going to continue getting invites to places and showing up at the table and stuff like that. And that's when, you know, like, Harry sees him, and he's, like, stunned to see that Dorian has not aged a day. And he can't even believe it. He's like, what's your secret, man? And Dorian's like, I ain't telling ya. But at this point, it's kind of, like, a known thing. And Dorian is doing things that, like, are a little bit underhanded, a little bit shady. He's just not living the life that you would think somebody who had started out as such an optimistic youth would be living. And it gets to the point where his portrait is continuing to decay as his, like, moral center continues to decay. And, you know, the story has, like, themes about like, morality and living in excess and decadence, and sort of the pursuit of vanity, sort of causing, you know, corruption of the soul, being so focused on, like, looking good that you're turning into a piece of shit because you're not doing anything to like develop your character, which is actually a real syndrome. There's actually a syndrome called the Dorian Gray effect, which is a psychological phenomenon where you become obsessed with aging and wanting to stop the aging process so much that you don't mature or age mentally, because you are so focused on trying to maintain your youth. And it's something very common with some wealthy upper class people who have issues getting older. Okay, I need my scoreboard. So, a couple of things happen. Sybil actually has a brother, who I think is named James, who is on the hunt for Dorian Gray because he believes, pretty rightfully, that Dorian is responsible for the death of his sister and he wants revenge. And he's hunting down Dorian Gray, and he even at one point meets Dorian but can't like reconcile the fact that Dorian looks like a man in his 20s, or a man who's barely 20, because he's looking for a man who at this point in time should be nearly 40, should be 38. My brain cannot do two things at the same time today. Okay. Half an inch. And a half an inch. And at the risk of not spoiling the ending of the story or anything significant, let's just say that Dorian does some crimes. There's a murder involved, and he even gets his friend to help him like get rid of the body. His portrait continues to look disgusting because by this point he is just like absolutely off the deep end. Half an inch. And you know, he's just morally bankrupt at this point. And this way. Half of 7 is 3.5. Half of a quarter is an eighth. And then another eighth. Gotta decide where we're gonna draw the line. Right here. And so, I don't know, I put it down like I was done. Now I'm done. So, it all ends fabulously and is a really interesting tale and sort of coming to terms with the fact that you are in fact aging, and how you choose to live your life, and how outer beauty does not always equal inner beauty, because his portrait is a direct reflection of his inner beauty, and it's terrifyingly disgusting and ugly. And like I think the story has like very straightforward themes. It's a very straightforward narrative. And I think I mentioned before that there's a couple movies out about it, and one has Ben Barnes. I don't remember. I may have just been saying that to somebody else. Who knows? There's a couple of movies out for the picture of Dorian Gray, so if you don't want to read the book but would like to watch the movie, there are some really good movies out. I would watch the classic before the more modern one, but they're all pretty dang good. But it is a fairly straightforward read. I enjoy Oscar Wilde's work. In general, he has a play. It's like a high society thing. It's not like... He has a thing. And it's called Lady Windermere's Fan, which I enjoy. But I actually enjoy The Importance of Being Earnest more, which is one of his later works, last works, before he went to jail. And so I find the story to be fairly easy to read and follow along with, is what I'm trying to say. And the themes are sort of right there presented before you in a way that's very obvious and easy to sort of comprehend, but also very satisfying to see in their execution. And I think that's important, because I think a lot of the times we get bogged down in media where we're like, oh, this was super straightforward and super basic, so therefore it's not very well thought out or well written. And that's not necessarily the case here. It is, in fact, very well done. It's just accessible and it's easy. And this is one of those things that like has lingered for quite some time because it's still showing up in popular media and things as being very relevant today. It keeps coming around. Dorian Gray is a character that shows up in a lot of things, including The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen by Alan Moore. And probably my more favorite depiction of Dorian being in the TV show Penny Dreadful. It's probably my favorite depiction of Dorian Gray. Should I have trimmed this down so it doesn't rub against the side? Probably. Not that I think it really does rub against the side, but, you know, having just that like little sliver off does make a difference in the motions. One more time. But yeah, I don't know. I really enjoy this one. I think it's I think the message is really clear and well delivered, and I think it's a good message. I also think it shows what happens when you choose to sort of neglect yourself and focus on what's like in the outer, and focus on what other people think about you too, because a lot of that is where this comes from, right? Is the pressure to sort of maintain your youth and your beauty, your attractiveness, in order to be accepted by a wider audience of peers. Where's my frame? Thinking about the execution here. Just annoyed. I should use the bigger one for the top part. How does it look? Okay, not bad, not bad. That'll work. That'll do. So, I got some decoratings to do. I got some things to do. So I'm going to switch to speed up mode and meet you guys in voiceover land. What I am going to do off camera, because it's going to take quite some time, is put a couple layers of the ultra thick embossing powder, which looks like this, onto this. I'm going to put a couple layers down, and then I'm going to stick it in my freezer so that it sets, instead of waiting overnight for it to all set, so that I can come back and crackle it up and do some interesting things, because this is the older version in my brain of the portrait, because it's darker, and we have sort of the brighter, lighter version before he gets all corrupted. So we're going to crackle this one. We're not going to crackle this one. I think I may still put a layer of the clear on top of this, just so that it's like under glass and matches sort of the vibe here, because it won't make sense that this one's all shiny and this one's not. So that's what I will do off camera, and then I'll come back and then we'll decorate these up and start putting some stuff together. Okay guys, so this is more sped up than normal. You might notice it'll slow back down a little bit towards the end, but I am endeavoring to keep these at like an hour long, no more than like an hour and a half, and this is the longest make I've had so far for this challenge, and by the end of it I had about 2 hours of footage and was like, no, because I want you guys to go back to your regular everyday scheduled programming. Also, I want you to have time to watch everybody else's videos, so I cannot monopolize 2 hours, especially when a lot of it is just watch me do the same repetitive thing over and over. So I cut out a bunch. I did a bunch of stuff off camera. This actually took me 2 days to do, when I had to well the goal was to get 2 videos done in the day. I got half of this video done. That gives you like a perspective on how long this stuff took. For a point in time, I was embossing, and just embossing, for like an hour. And by the end of it, you know, when my will to live had faded, I was like, this is gonna have to be another day. You're exhausted. So I you know, it was more and less ambitious than I intended. I had a simple moving feature as my concept, and was like, this will be so quick and easy. And it's the biggest lie I've ever told myself, because all of the extra pages meant that there was more work to do. I was compounding the work by adding extra pages. So something to, I guess, consider going forward, how I'm going to address that and take care of that. Also, I guess I have to consider how many pages I'm going to add to each of the prompts going forward, because yeah, I can't spend this much time on one thing anymore. And not to say I'm not absolutely pleased with how this came out. I love how this came out. There was a couple of bumps in the road that we will talk about, but I absolutely love how this came out and how it all came together and how all the pieces fit and tell the story without telling the story. You know, I absolutely adore it, and I just don't have the time to spend doing this much stuff for every single one of these prompts, because I only have a day and a half to do the next 3. So yeah, I'm gonna get that done now. But at any rate, what did I do? Oh, I learned some things. I made a big boo-boo that I did not even consider until all was said and done, when I went to go retrieve my piece from the freezer, and then was like, oh, Houston, we have a problem, because the image that I'm using as my stand-in for Dorian, you remember how I Mod Podged it so that we could do some mixed media on top? Well, we don't end up doing the mixed media because I added the ultra thick embossing powder to the top, and you'll see at some point, I will show it to you guys in a future clip, that I end up having just a handful of plastic, and that's because it doesn't stick to the Mod Podge. So it didn't do the thing I wanted it to do, which is give me a cool crackle effect and then a cool glazed over effect, so that I could then go back and add some like mixed media and make it look grungy and gross like the picture was rotting. Couldn't do that. I had to pivot, and my pivot was right into acrylic, not acrylic, acetate. Again, those Michael's Halloween acetates were my pivot, because I did not have time to come up with a whole new concept or spend a lot of time doing a bunch of like in-depth mixed media. So I had to make some choices. So I guess, you know, like not everything goes the way that we want it to go when we're crafting. And sometimes you have to learn a mistake that shouldn't have been a mistake, because you should have already known that plastic doesn't stick to plastic like that. You should have anticipated it, but I didn't. And I had to learn the mistake that I made. I had to learn the results of what I was cooking up there. So right idea, wrong execution is basically what I'm saying here. I think it would have probably been better to go through with some crackle paste or like paint. That would have probably stuck better. It also would have just made more sense to just emboss it without putting the glossy top coat on top. Because even though it is matte Mod Podge, it's still glossy. So you live and you learn. And I pivoted, and thankfully the pivot saved time instead of added to the time I would have had to add to do the all the mixed media things I wanted to do. But yeah, I just didn't have the time. This was a very complex construction, apparently. And so I'm thinking about how I was executing certain parts of the extra challenges I gave myself. I went very simplistic for the library pocket. You guys saw I used some ephemera. I turned a pocket and a tag into my little library pocket. And then for the clusters, I went with a different sort of idea instead of like the standard like layers of paper or layers of fabric type of cluster, because again, I was trying to save time, but also it took time. Probably took me more time than it would have been to just slap together a couple of clusters. But I wanted the background to hold the clusters, if that makes sense. So I sort of made, and this is me stretching the definition of cluster. It's not even like a thing. But I made the collaging effect into the cluster part, and used the embossing powder to make my clusters. So the stamping I did, because the other challenge I had was gold or copper, and I used both because I thought both would look cool. So I sort of worked that in together with any paper that I collaged into the background. I have the stenciling that I'm doing here that you can see I'm doing it in black. I'm going to do it in the VersaFine because it's not going to dry no matter how much I try. Even hours later, it still picks up embossing powder, which is maddening. It's a stickier ink than I realized, but it's also something I can work with to my advantage, like in this space where I wanted it to be more grungy, less precise, with like more blending into the background, because I'm building up these layers to build my clusters, right? And it's sort of clusters of texture. So I'm going to go in and, do a layer of copper embossing. And then I'm going to come back and do a layer of gold embossing. But I'm actually going to use that vintage mix I made with the gold and the silver so that it's a little bit more grungified looking and not nearly as like a bright pop of bright gold, because I kind of want the copper to sort of be part of the story. Because in this, like, I'm thinking intentionally again with how I'm choosing these elements, even though I didn't choose to use copper. But copper tarnishes and it sort of obscures the surface, and it kind of gives me the vibe of like what's going on with Dorian's painting when it's getting more tarnished over time because his inner character is getting more tarnished, so that's like where my brain was making the connections here. So I didn't want to like overshine that, but I wanted to sort of put a little bit of gold on there, thinking that like, this is sort of the veneer, this sort of like gilding of his reputation, of his outward face, his personality sort of presents as gold and everything is shiny and bright and happy, but really underneath is like this tarnished, rotten thing. It's just like a layer of gold flake on top that's like covering up the grossness that's within. That's where my brain is with this kind of thing, or with this idea and concept. That you can see like chunks of plastic I will get to melt back in. The cool thing is I'll be able to melt them back in, but I ended up just covering it up with acetate, and I did use the printed acetate to go over top that crackled up embossing powder. It's just that because it's not sticking to the surface, eventually it's going to start flaking away more and more. So it kind of looks like there's like broken glass behind the panel of acetate, which I think is neat, but it also still adds to that like grunginess going on in the background of the decaying of his portrait. It still looks decayed. It is very hard to show on camera, so I don't know how I'm going to like capture it to show it to you guys, but I'm going to do my best to hopefully help you kind of see what I'm seeing here, what I'm envisioning. And so, yeah, I've made this like sliding mechanism before for mini albums. I think I've shown it to you guys in a different capacity. If not here, then on my Patreon for sure. But I know that I've done a tutorial about how to do this at some point, when I don't know. I almost forgot to put the picture in there, though. That would have been very sad if I had let that glue dry and then realized, because I really like how this frame came out. And then I decided that it needed bugs. I had a bug stamp, so I already embossed some centipedes, like, in a couple of places, but I have these bug stickers that I have been hoarding for, I want to say 10 years from Michaels, because they are my favorite, like, Halloween thing they have ever put out, these bugs and creepy crawlies, and I think that it goes with the whole sort of vibe here, because, like, bugs on their surface are kind of icky for the most part, unless we're talking, like, the big three: butterflies, ladybugs, and what is the third one? I said the big three like I had a third one, but moss for me. I'm sure that there's bugs other people like more, but I like moss. But beyond those ones who are outwardly sort of beautiful, most of them are gross. They're a little bit disturbing, especially if you get really close up to look at, but they're kind of beneficial and important for the ecosystem and the environment and our important food source and things like that. So I'm thinking it's like the opposite of the Dorian Gray effect. Like, outwardly they are ugly, but inwardly they are very important and attractive to many things. But Dorian Gray is the opposite. Outwardly he is very attractive, but inwardly he's a piece of garbage and not really beneficial to the ecosystem. So I wanted to throw in there's a snake sticker, which keeps with our snake theme here, because he's sort of a snake in the grass type of character, because he sneaks up on you with how insidious he really is. And I don't know, yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm actually really happy with how everything came out. It was a lot of work for something that should not have been this much work, but it was definitely worth it, because I think as I'm going through these and getting to like sort of bring these stories to life through imagery, I am really having a good time. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm really glad that Belle wanted to do something along this line for our challenge, because it's been really fun to sort of explore these stories in this sort of way, this visual storytelling kind of way, and sort of pick apart the themes and stuff here, and use that to put my pages together in a way that feels intentional and purposeful, and also calls back the story to me. So I feel like I can look at these in the future at any point in time and be like, oh yeah, that's what that story is about. Like if I was ever confused, I could look back at these and be like, oh yeah, I've made all the connections in my brain here. And yeah, the words, stuff, things. We're going to add in these bugs. We're going to add in this die cut of death, because I feel like death is always sort of close to the surface here, because this is a story about dealing with one's own mortality and aging, and I feel like death is like a constant companion with Dorian throughout the story, even if it's not overtly a story about murder and death, although there is a little murder and death in this story. It's just sort of that thing where, like, you know, you're trying to run away from death, and yet somehow death is always with you. That is the vibe here with this story. So that's why I chose to use like the skulls and the death, the dancing skeleton, all to sort of get that point across. And then I did some little word strips, which is funny because I told you guys the last one I was supposed to do word strips and I didn't. But this one I did little word strips that I embossed and then stuck those out to have some sort of, I don't know, call back to the themes, like a mortal beauty and a troublesome ending and a wicked thing, because Dorian is a wicked thing and his portrait shows that, and this is me struggling to show it to you. I gotta come back and figure out how I can show it to you guys better. At least you can see the acetate in the shot and see how it's sort of overlaid there, but it looks cooler in person. But unfortunately, I don't know how to like film acetate with the way that my lighting is set up currently. I have to get better lighting set up. I'd like to get some like hanging lights that I could put behind my desk so that they cast light forward, and then the only shadow I have to worry about is my own when I'm like recording, and otherwise nothing will be like a concern. But anyway, here are my pages, and don't forget to check out the hashtag Haunt Your Crafts. Check out what Bella's doing over at Bella Blue Creations, and make sure you check out the playlist in the description box below so you can see what everybody else is making and get a hit of the stories if you want to check those out. Until next time, guys, I appreciate your faces. Happy crafting and goodbye.